Hi, everyone. I thought I'd go ahead and record a little PD on demand video that walks through how to get the most engagement and participation when using virtual breakout rooms. And that's going to involve a lot of taking what we've learned about cooperative learning and things that we would do in person and then applying them to the online environment. And how this all came about was, just like we would get frustrated if we put kids in groups and then we realize one student's doing all the work or they're talking about things not related to the activity or they're just sitting there staring at one another and no one's doing anything. Well, you can imagine the same things happen in an online environment as well. So, over the course of the last couple of weeks, I've been trying to use a workflow that solves some of these issues. And it's still a work in progress. Any other little tips and tricks for sure are welcome. But throughout this video, and there will be timestamps throughout, my hope is to kind of walk you through how you would do virtual breakout rooms with the hope that students are engaged in those rooms and that you get more fruitful discussion and work output from those students. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so let's see what this looks like in Google Meets. Now, Google Meets, like Zoom, now has built-in breakout rooms. We've all probably experienced this and used this for a little bit now. The issue becomes when you set up your breakout rooms, how do you assign the students that you want to those breakout rooms? And here I'm going to make 5 breakout rooms. So in Zoom, you can pre-assign students to those breakout rooms by uploading a CSV file of what students belong in what rooms. It gets a little bit messy though, as this might be a reoccurring thing that you want from class to class. So even Zoom isn't the perfect way to go about saving configurations and groups and rooms that students should be in. And I know it's a common ask for teachers is, can I save groups or pre-create groups in Google Meets? The answer to both of those is no. You can't pre-create them. And you also can't save them after you leave the meet. Now, what you can do is, say for instance, there were 25 students on this call. They would all appear under this main call section. I can drag them into their appropriate room if I had a list of what student belongs in what group. The problem I found was it does take a little bit of time to do that, and it's a little tedious, and I think it just wastes too much instructional time to do that. Plus, let's just say this was a student and I had to put them in breakout room number 5. It doesn't seem to want to follow you down when you scroll. And so right now, I'm guessing all I could get to is breakout room 4, and then I have to manually scroll down and then move that person again to 5. So it's just a little frustrating with a little tech glitch right there. So normally what I've done is I just hit the shuffle button. And then if there are some students who don't belong with each other in a group, or a group is just completely unbalanced, it's a lot easier than to just move 1 or 2 rather than do the whole entire class. So I get the bulk done just by hitting shuffle. Okay. What's nice too is we'll talk about this as you're go ahead and doing cooperative structures, is that there's a timer now. So it can automatically call students back after you tell them, okay, you're going to work on this question for 3 minutes. I'm setting a timer right now. You'll be called back in the main room to share out after 3 minutes. So that's pretty useful. So I'm going to hop back into the template now to talk about, well, if I randomly shuffle students into rooms, how do I know who's in what room? And then how do I assign roles? Because that's where the real engagement happens. So when doing virtual breakout rooms, I've found that it's a lot easier to manage and maintain and keep track of what students are doing if they're all on the same document. Now, you could do this with Jamboard and give each group their own slide. However, I find that slides is a little bit easier to move around things and edit things. And so I prefer to stay in slides, but you could do a lot of this with Jamboard as well, particularly if you need students to annotate and write on top of things. But for the most part, slides should suffice. So what happens here is I have this template that I've built now that I've used that assigns students a color. And that color, we'll see here in a little bit, corresponds to the name of the breakout room that they're in. So students would be placed into a breakout room whose name is one of these colors, and then they would just click on the top row right here, and it would jump to a set of color-coded slides that they would be responsible for doing with their group. So if you can see here on the left, there's a group of red slides, green, blue, purple, and orange. Okay, so the way that this works is you as the teacher would create this template, and then you would attach to Classroom and then set the settings to everyone can edit. So the whole entire class is on the same group of slides. They're just working within their unique color set. Okay. Now, what we'll jump to here in a second is what that looks like then once you start a Google Meet. Now, I'm going to describe a lot of this workflow using Google Meets just because it offers a lot more integration with other Google products, more so than Zoom does. But I'll go ahead and kind of just point some things out about Zoom as we go along as well. Okay, now that we're back into the template, this is how we carry on that workflow between Google Meets randomly assigning students to a room and then using this template to get some cooperative learning engagement happening in small groups. So I go ahead, I hit shuffle. I also then rename the rooms. The default is breakout 1, breakout 2, breakout 3. But then I rename the rooms red, green, blue, purple, and orange. And so once students get placed into a breakout room with the corresponding color, I tell them, whatever color room you got placed in, the first thing you're going to do then is hop onto slide 1 here and put your name somewhere in the column that matches your room. So if I got placed into a blue room, I'd pick a square in the blue column to put my name. So at the end of it all, it should look something like this. Let's just assume that these letters are student names, and this is what your chart should look like. So now as a teacher, when I'm monitoring the activity, I know who's in what room. I can also see that in Meets, but I do a lot of my monitoring now in this slide deck as well. So that's just half the battle, right? All the students have a room, but now how do I actually get them to all talk to one another? How do I get them to all participate and actually do some of the work? And that's where our cooperative learning structures come in. And so the easiest way to do that then is to assign students roles, person 1, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5. But normally, if we were in person and students were sitting at a desk, we have those placard cards that tell students what number person they are. However, if Google just randomly assigned person 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know whose role is what, right? So I could do it very simply. Once all the kids put their names in there, I could just say person 1, 2, 3, 4, and just get going from there. Now, what happens is, though, for some reason, students also think, well, I'm never going to put my name in row one because I don't want to be person one. And person one usually is the person that gets called on to do everything first. Okay. So if I don't just want to say, okay, person 1, 2, 3, 4, I can make it a little bit more interesting. And you don't have to do this part. So all this is going to be extra. So if you want to stop right now, have the kids fill out their names, and then you as a teacher assign your roles. And just, it could be random too. This role, it doesn't even have to be 1, 2, 3, 4. It could be this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and up here is 4. Totally random. If you want to make it super random, what I've done is I've rolled a dice. And so this slide right here has some templates. So this bottom one right here, if I click on it, it sends me to Google, and there's a 20-sided die. And so I roll this 5 times, 1 time for each group, and then I place the corresponding numbers in this last column here. And then I assign person 1, 2, 3, 4, going from person 1 being the largest number, and then all the way down to the lowest number being person 4 or 5, depending on how many students are in a group. Okay. And then that makes it random for them. Sometimes I let them watch me roll the dice to make it more exciting. Sometimes what I do is I roll the dice in the background, and to cut down on downtime. So while I'm rolling that dice and assigning roles, the first slide of every group of colored slides is something students can do independently, whether it's read something, whether it's watch something, or answer a question individually that they will then talk to their groups about. So the first slide is always independent work, just in case I need to do this behind the scenes and not cut down on instructional time. Another fun thing, though, if I want them to, kind of make it seem like I'm randomly assigning roles, is there is a website called WordWall, and you can have this little fun activity that just loads this pre-made video here. And so if I hit start, I would then say, okay, somebody in row 1, and I'd pick a student that was in row 1 on that template. Pick a box. You're going to pick what role you are for today. And they might say, okay, we're going to pick box 4. Okay, everybody in row 1 is now person 2. So anytime I say person 2 starts this, that's you. And then I go down to row 2. Okay, somebody in row 2, pick a box. They shout out, okay, we're going to go box 1. Okay, everybody in row 2 is person 3. So if I say person 3, that's you. And you don't have to do person 1, 2, 3, 4, just like you did in your classrooms. You could have names for roles. You could have all different kinds of things. I just still use person 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And so what you have then is something that looks like this, where you assign the roles to the side here. So when students are in their rooms, I say, okay, everybody who's a person 3, you're doing this. Or everyone that's a person 2, you're responsible for this, or you're talking first, so on and so forth. It really helps with engagement that way. The last bit that I want to mention here is how do we get students' attention? And we'll jump to that in just a second here. Okay, so the last bit of help or tips that I want to give is how do I keep track of what students are doing inside their breakout rooms? Well, you as the teacher do have the ability to hop in to a breakout room to talk directly to those students. But what's nice is now that everything is in a central slide deck and everyone is working in the same file, this is the only file that you need to keep open. So my first tip that I'm going to give you here is that while they're working in their breakout rooms, you can go to View, Grid View, and now you can see exactly who's on what slide and what they're doing on those slides. Now comes the point of how do I communicate with students if I'm noticing that there's a misconception happening in multiple groups as I'm watching and monitoring these slides. In Zoom, you can send a text message to all breakout rooms. The problem with that is if they're busy working on this slide deck, they're probably not going to see your text message. So what I've come up with is a system for students to get my attention and then for me to get their attention. So a couple of things that we can do here. So I'm going to go back and get out of this grid view for just a second and mention one thing. If a bunch of people were on this file, there would be a chat button that appears right here, okay? And everybody would see that because all students are on the Google slide deck. I could then type a message to everyone to remember to do that. But again, sometimes some students see it, sometimes they don't. So what I've done instead is I've made this attention slide. So what I do then is if I see a misconception and I say, don't forget to ... and I make my whatever it is I don't want them to forget. And all I do then is while they're working, I copy this and I literally just paste it onto whatever slide that they're on. So it covers, whatever they're doing and they can't miss it. And I tell them you can delete this box after your group reads this. So this is how in your face, don't forget to do this. And it's worked pretty well. Okay. Now, if they need to get a hold of me, they would do the same thing. So if I were in grid view again, I could tell them if you need my help, put a giant yellow star or some other shape on your slide so that as I'm in this view, if I see that shape appear on any of the slides, I know I can hop into that breakout room to see if they need help and kind of talk to them directly. So just a couple of kind of communication tips too, just like you would walk around the room. This is now how you can do that virtually. So hopefully those tips help you out.